Excellent.
Should we wait until 7:30?
Yeah.
There's a microphone. The microphone. See, you don't mind banging the microphone.
Here you go, that's better
There
than
you go.
Okay. And there is water on the table, I only put one. So Eric,
Could you remember?
the CIP is not going to be on the next week's agenda, evidently. I can only confer with one person about the CIP on the board. Can I get together with you, because I feel like as an engineer? Okay, let's,
Could you guys remember just to speak into your
yes.
microphones?
Did we do better last time?
I think
See,
it depends on who's filming, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah.
see,
All right, should I go by the clock or my phone?
Probably your phone's more accurate than
Yeah.
the clocks.
All right, I guess we're ready, if the camera's ready? Yes, okay. I call the meeting to order of the Granada Community Services District Board of Directors. We start with a roll call.
Okay, President Matthew Clark cannot be here tonight. We have Vice President Barbara Dye.
Here?
We have Board Member Jim Blanchard.
Here.
Board Member David Seaton.
Here.
And Board Member Eric Citronell.
Here.
And I'm the only staff member here today, Delia Comito, Assistant General Manager.
And let me just say, this is a special meeting that was
It's actually
called-
an adjourned regular
It's, okay,
meeting.
it's an adjourned regular meeting,
Yeah.
so that we could address the issues around passing the ordinance for, to help deal with the skateboard facility. First, do we have anyone who wants to comment on items that are not on the agenda? Ah. Chris, did you want to comment? No. Oh, okay. All right, seeing none, I guess we'll move on to the agenda items. We have one agenda item tonight, which is addressing the ordinance related to use of skateboard facilities on district property. Do you have any staff comments, Delia?
I don't. The only thing is that it was mostly discussed at the meeting in June. Quite a bit actually was that the district will be meeting the legal requirements in order to move the facility or the ramp onto district property, and there will be some signage involved. And other than that, I think we have everything else in place in order for it, you know, liability insurance and all that.
So can we talk timeline for a moment?
Sure.
All right, tonight we do the first reading of the ordinance. And then we have a motion to approve. And then at next week's meeting, there would be a second reading of the ordinance.
That's correct.
And if it is approved by the board, then it's published in the review for 30 days.
That's correct. It would go in on the 24th, I believe I figured. So our next meeting is here. If we can get it published on the 24th, then we would be looking at, you know, sometime in August.
All right, so our insurance can't be in place until the ordinance is fully approved. Once it's been published for 30 days, it automatically becomes, goes into effect?
Goes into effect.
No further action is required. So-
Just the signage posting and actually.
No, just on the ordinance.
Yeah.
So the ordinance
The
just goes
ordinance-
into effect 30 days after it's
Upon publishing, that is correct.
published in a public newspaper.
That's
All
correct.
right. And then we need to have signage up, and we could be starting to prepare that.
We are. We've gotten the language, and Bill has prepared that. He's on vacation, as you know, but we'll go ahead and get those signs ordered.
And so, and then setting up an inspection. Now, when the inspection would happen after it was moved onto GCSD property?
I don't know that it, I would think so, because it could, you know, it's going to be moved around, so obviously I think we should probably wait until after it's physically moved.
Right, but we could have it all ready to go,
Yeah.
you know, set up.
I'm not sure who's going to do the inspection yet. But
Right, I know, but
Yeah.
we have time to figure that out.
Yeah,
If we have.
we do. We have a
We
little
have
bit of time.
5 weeks before we have it. And our insurance does not actually come into effect until after the ordinance is in effect and until the signage is posted.
My understanding is our new liability coverage took effect July 1st.
Oh, so the insurance is
And
not
they
holding
are
it up.
aware of the ramp going up, so.
Okay.
Yes, so we are covered now.
So, does it have to wait the 30 days to be moved?
That's a
Or
good
the 5
question.
weeks?
I think that the ordinance has to be effective before, that's what Bill had indicated. We
That's
want
what our
the
attorney,
ordinance-
Bill is
yeah.
our attorney.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, well, that might be something to discuss at next week's meeting
Yeah,
for
we
the
can.
second reading, to see, just so it's clear. I mean, I think the community wants to know what the timeline is,
Right.
and,
Well, I think until the ordinance is adopted, we really can't do anything. I think that's what he said at the last meeting.
okay, all right, that makes sense. Does anyone on the board want to comment before we take public comment?
I mean, I'd like to hear what they have to say and obviously comment, because that's, but, just in general, I would say, yeah, I mean, this is just an ordinance that regardless of at what point we were gonna be ready to do a skate park, this is the very first step we need to do. The next step, I feel like there is a ton of uncertainty, because even once we got our insurance lined up, then we're gonna have to go out and get quotes and all those signage.
No, we have
and-
insurance.
But for the insurance to be effective, it's gonna be with stipulations that we meet their signage requirements and other type of, liability
I
issues.
think they've already figured out
No,
what
that's
the
been
signage is.
settled?
Yeah.
The insurance
So we
is-
need to figure out who's gonna be, since there's no national accreditation industry for inspection, we need to get
That's what
a
we need.
quality, somebody, I guess, who's inspected skate parks before, we could find that independently to.
Right.
So I feel like there are a ton of things that,
Well, it sounds like the only thing is lining up the inspection. It sounds like everything else is pretty well in hand.
just as far as an update, maybe you could give a good update. What are we at in terms of, to update myself and everybody really, in terms of Caltrans and where they're at with all those communications up to this point?
I've had no contact with
No.
Caltrans.
Okay, so
Um,
nothing.
We've seen
Matthew-
copies of the correspondence, and Caltrans has agreed that as long as we are making steady progress toward moving it, they will not remove it.
Okay, so that's a huge, yeah, that's good, so as long as we're in that direction, and they're obviously, I'm sure, at one point gonna give us a notice to say whether 30 days or anything, at some point, if they feel like we're moving too slow, but as long as,
Well, we're moving.
as long as
great-
there's that open
We're moving
mind.
about as fast as it's
as long as
possible
they
to
basically
move.
acknowledge it, yeah, when we're ready to take it down, they're aware that we wanna, that's a really good sign that people could be
Right.
rest assured, I think, so that's good. But yeah, no, I'd like to hear other board members and obviously the public, which is most important.
Yeah. Anyone else want to comment, or?
No.
All right, well, we have some requests to speak. We'll start with Dan Stegman?
That's pretty close out. My name is Dan Stedgink. I'm a rescue diver out of Pacifica that volunteered in the search for Richard Moss, who died in May 2017, and he was a skate park user. I have a letter here from his father. I'm just going to read verbatim. I have a copy for each of you guys there. So, Dan Moss, on behalf of Richard Moss, may he rest in peace. I'm aware of certain activities to remove the skateboard ramp from the jetty area in El Granada. My son Richard would skate there after work and on weekends regularly. He made good friends and learned a good skill as well as self-confidence. There's a marker memorial at the ramp recognizing him. Richard was a wonderful human being and tried many sports, from baseball, football, and roller hockey. He loved to try things. Sometimes it would only be once. Other times he would develop a passion. As it turns out, skateboarding was his passion athletically. I remember a time when Richard and I drove home one day along Devil's Slide. I think he was about 11. He told me he wanted to be a professional skateboarder. Most parents would do at this point. I encouraged him and at the same time wondered how that would work out. Turns out Richard loved to skateboard and he was good at it. If the ramp at the jetty wasn't there, I don't know how it would have worked out for him and others. In observing this wonderful person I was lucky enough to know for a short 22 years, turns out not all sports have to be the big ones like baseball, football, and the like. The jetty was a wonderful building block for him and is the location for his first memorial on the coast. Many others have skated there and as far as I know are all good people. I believe there's much more to be gained by helping the community by leaving the ramp at the jetty than by taking it away. All the skateboarders were nothing but the best in the search for Richard before we knew of his death. They will all have a special place in my heart. People who didn't know Richard may think nefarious things happen at the ramp. All I can say is there are nefarious things happening everywhere. The people who use the ramp are the same as everyone else on the coast, except in my experience, better people. Please keep the ramp at the jetty in Richard's name. There's no reason I can see for moving or demolishing the ramp. Thank you, Dan Moss.
Thank you very much. That's very,
Thank you.
very moving. Chris?
I just need a moment to gather myself after hearing that letter. Been here before. Thank you for saving this ramp. The community, for some reason, is still dubious, but it is happening, and it's happening because GCSD is making it happen. So thank goodness for that, and I really appreciate the efforts on that. One thing I would say, so the ordinance, just reading it through quickly, it's, you know, it's a legal document, so it is what it is. One thing I would say though is, before you move that ramp, do every single other thing. Caltrans has said they're fine as long as you're moving forward, and if you just give them some updates, you're moving forward. But have the thing inspected, have the material, whatever repairs you're gonna do, have those materials like stacked right there so that the second you move that ramp, it's 24 or 48 hours before people can start riding. Because if you move that ramp now and it's like sitting there for a month and people can't use it, people for some reason already want to believe that you're not gonna keep it. And so if it sits there for a month or two and people hear, oh, we're waiting for the, you know, for the final inspection and the liability insurance to be finally signed off, that's just gonna infuriate people, and people will start using it. And then we're gonna have lawbreakers, and, you know, so I would just do every single thing, and then literally the day you move it, you have people hammering nails and finishing stuff, and the next day kids can use it, or adults, or whoever. I think that would be really appreciated, and not have an interruption in service for people using that ramp. So the ordinance looks fine to me. I just had some questions that came about that I now realize that are not relevant to the ordinance language itself, but that questions raised for me that I think the community has, and I heard David saying there's still some other things that need to be looked at. We talked about the signs. I think Delia said the signs are being ordered or something.
They
What,
haven't been ordered.
what are the signs going to say? Because at the last meeting, there was some discussion and there was some debate amongst the community about maybe less is more on the signs. We've got the ordinance, but less is more on the signs. And so what will the signs say exactly? And then per the document here, who's going to be informed? You know, it says under penalty of citation, who's going to be issuing the citation? Nobody at GCSD is authorized to issue a citation, correct?
We are authorized to issue citations via an ordinance code that we have.
So you have a peace officer, some kind of somebody on
Technically,
GCSD has peace officer
Yeah, but for
certification?
something like that, I think I'm not really sure. We'll have to check
Right,
into
so,
that
and
more.
then is that person, would you have to call that person, and is the sheriff's gonna be called? I think people wanna know, like, just in case I forgot my helmet and I'm on there, you know, is somebody gonna call the sheriff on me and I'm gonna get a $250 citation on this? Is there gonna be some kind of, practical, you know, leniency or education period or something like that? I realize that GCSD is on the hook for liability insurance and that rules the world, but there's the practicality of that thing's been there for years, and, you know, I don't see the paramedics there every day. I don't see the sheriffs there breaking up fights. So per what this gentleman read in the letter, I've never seen a problem, no matter what, you know, people are hanging out there. So the enforcement, I know you have to put in the document, but if that can be, you know, not the primary focus going forward. And then other questions like what will be the hours? I know there's no lighting there, but I think some people don't mind, you know, a full moon, you know, skating, or I've been there when the moon's out on the water there, and it's pretty spectacular. So, you know, what would be the hours? And again, what would be the penalty if you're there, you know, an hour after the hours? Now that I've gathered myself, I just want to say I did not know Richard, but his disappearance galvanized this community. And seeing pictures of him as a kid doing roller hockey, I have a kid, and I hope that he can use this ramp. sorry. It's been a long day. That letter really hit home. I talked to Dan after Richard disappeared, and this ramp can really be a healing element and a place for kids to grow up and to learn the right things about life. Thank you for saying.
Thank you, Chris. Michelle?
Well, I'm doing just fine with you last bit, Chris.
It was that letter, just thinking about Richard.
So what you're
Can
dealing
you
with
introduce
is you're
yourself?
not just moving a
Can you
ramp.
introduce yourself just for the
Oh, I'm
camera?
Michelle Dragony. You're not just moving a ramp, you're moving a culture. We take a lot of time over making sure that frogs have a path to get to the water that they need to. We need to make sure that we keep a path open for skaters to be the astronauts and the cowboys of our future. We don't have any daring people anymore except for people like this. And they're daring because they break all the rules. If you set up a bunch of rules, they'll break them. And you'll create a PR nightmare, a war zone of people who want to be free and people who want to set rules. So I agree that you've got to put some rules in the ordinance and whatnot, but you know, I jokingly said to Matthew, I said, this is the sign. Skateboarding is supercalifragilistically, dangerous. You know, have an emoji with the big eyes and the teeth and that is a nudge. And in the world of behavioral economics, they're using nudges as a way to get people to behave properly. Skaters already behave properly. They've been doing it for 8 years. But if you insinuate a bunch of rules with helmets and this, that, and on a sign, and you give power to the legal authority to give a ticket to somebody, I get pulled over for not stopping completely at a stop sign. They want me to actually put my foot down on the ground. Bikers don't do that. Skaters skate the way they skate because they understand in their best self-interest this is how they do it. They're not going to hurt themselves. So you need to trust them to make the judgments and not be parental. So I hope you really consider the signs. It's going to be a throwdown if you put them up to break them. So what do you think about that?
I think all good things.
Thank you,
I think,
Michelle.
yeah, thank you. I think even what you're saying, the signage, or is a kid really gonna read a 48 paragraph sign or an emoji or something visually that, is actually put up the sign, but if you really wanna make an impact, it's gonna be those other nudges that,
I think the thinking
In
is.
the world of signage, the whole iconographic sort of approach has proven to be very effective.
I think one idea is to model it somewhat on the existing sign in Half Moon Bay Skate Park. Also, I think our intention is to do the minimum signage required by the insurance carrier. So, I mean, we're doing what we have to do to make this happen.
But there's other skate parks. There's other skate parks all over California that have different signages. There's all kinds of different insurances. You're going through one carrier. I mean, in the email that I got from Matthew, in terms of the expert that Steve was expressing that you guys should contact, he said, oh, we'll contact them when we're building the skate park. Contact him now. You're dealing with a culture that you don't understand. And if you take the time to interview this guy that Steve has put forward, I think it will blow your mind. It certainly blew mine. You know, one of the rules about skate parks that Tony Hawk says is the number one rule is put it in a public space where people have lots of eyes on it. There's these weird little rules about how you build a skate park that are very, very important to understand. And again, there are skate parks out there that have those signs that are just like, be careful. And the hazardous sport law defends that position. And Google whether or not there have been skate park lawsuits. I gave you all that information. There haven't been any. So you're creating a problem out of nothing. We should be cooler than that. We're a skate park and a surfing community. We should understand we live out here, we're 3% of the San Mateo County population, and we are on our own. We're on our own because we like it that way. So let the skaters be on their own. Let them be who they are, right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And,
Anyone else want to
Just
say
to
anything?
respond in terms of, I think, all good things, even I think one of the things you said is it for the frogs or for the people? I think, there's so much about the beauty in what you see with a selfie and the vision of just seeing, hundreds of people integrating, exercising together. I even look at the skate park. I think I look at growing up in this community. You look at 20 years ago, gang violence and some of the segregation of the Latin community here. And I almost think you could look at, the police enforcement, some things they did there. But one of the things people don't talk about is some of the early Mexican skaters that were these people that were bridges across the whole entire community, because they were the people that were just like, hey, we're all one community. And you go back and you look at, if you really were to analyze the real change in our community, it might be going back to the early, how skating integrated people that otherwise would be totally on different sides of everything in life, and from there slowly, so many good things came out of that. And I think that's where, it's like we have this one chance, this one piece of land to make it to where everyone could come together, in the name of exercise and fitness and mutually exercising together. And I think it's just like, skating is a perfect example of, multiple people doing their thing and all kind of connecting and coming together despite all that types of differences. And I think, I think you said it in terms of distilling it down to what is this about? Is this for the people? And that vision of not how it looks in a picture, but a video that lasts a lifetime of it's funny. I was crying, with the Richard Moss. I mean, it's so emotional. But before I even came here, thinking about the skate park, I was crying at the vision of, we have this one chance. You look at, I was thinking, you look at a single mother working 2 jobs during the week, and her only chance is Saturday and Sunday. She has her kids, and, one of them's a future X Game skate champion. The other one's, the Olympians. And it's like, what did you do? She's like, really, I just went to Burnham Strip every Saturday and Sunday, and I could occupy them for 8 hours a day because they went from skating to basketball to long jump, and just create this mecca of fitness where this is our chance to do that. There's nowhere else even close to, on the coast that is that central spot where you could come, spend a whole day and have everything there. And we don't have the space to do a crazy central park, but it's just like we got to look for these opportunities where, where as many people are actively, exercising together. And I think, I'm emotional right now. I think it's, I think, it's one of those things. You read a letter like this, and
Well,
yeah. I mean, you see a dad that,
Well, I think
he could probably be doing a lot of things with his time, and he's sitting at his computer late at night, and it shows you, it goes way beyond a sport. And I think that's, I think you really distill it down, and I'm not a skater, so I don't even understand it, but that's where it is. The skate community, you really think of it, in some ways it's all these outcasts that didn't like the organized and the regimented nature of all these other sports that they were trying to do, and they're a complete outcast, but skating brings people together, and it's like, it gives them an identity. And you look at that, and that's where it's like, you know, we could talk about sports, we could talk about exercise, but you talk about something like skating, and when you look at that community aspect to it, and it really does become on a different level than all other sports, you know, in terms of that, you know, that level of where a dad is gonna, you know, have a cause and do things like this when, you know, it's not like his kid was a pro skater or anything close to that. He just knows that he looks back on his kid's life and realizes that that was his identity. And that's where it's like, dude, maybe we have a, you know, it's like, so it's, yeah, you know, I'll let someone else go. Go ahead, Jim. I'm sorry.
Thank you, David, that was very,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, thank you for everybody's comments. I
Yeah.
think the issue I have right now comes down to the issue of the signs and the enforcement. These are the biggest questions we have in terms of making sure these work and are effective. And I think the enforcement is going to be a situation where we have to sort of clearly identify, you know, what is really going to be the guidelines of, right? Do we want to have any enforcement at all? And I can see that sort of just being a situation we don't really have. You have rules and you just don't enforce them. So people have confidence in doing it, and I can sort of buy into that because people self-police themselves. But we may need to have the signs up there for lawyers. Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what it comes, you know, so you can say. But that may be the situation. But I can see what comes down, you have them up there. But we have to, you know, we sort of enforce, you know, you just have everybody sort of self-policing.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would add is, you know, we also, I think, as a board and as a community, should all keep in mind that we have Caltrans hanging over our heads, and we don't want perfect to be the enemy of the good and get so bogged down into coming up with the perfect solution that we all wake up one day and find the ramp gone because we haven't moved fast enough. So I think we really want to, we've heard the community, we've heard the passion, we want to move quickly, and if that means that we have to adjust things once it's on GCSD property to a fit that's better for the community, I feel like that's a much better solution than trying to be perfect up front and have this take months.
And I think yes, I agree completely with that. And I also think we've tried really hard to minimize the signage, to do this as fast as possible. I understand all, you know, that this is really important to a lot of people, and that's one reason why we're having a special meeting tonight, and or a regular meeting tonight, but an extra one. And because we see how important this is to the community and to the people who've been involved with it, and we're working with a lot of you on some of these details, and we're doing the minimum we have to do to be, you know, a responsible board. So, Steve, would you like to comment?
To your point, which is a really good one, and we appreciate, obviously, all of us appreciate your enthusiasm for the park, and for the ramp, and maybe for a park later. But there's a website that I've gone to that Michelle mentioned that has a picture of every sign at every skate park in California, or at least about 110 out of the 300 or so. And they do vary, but they all have some commonalities, which is the requirement of helmets and pads. Just because it's an archaic state law that was built back when most skate parks were private and at a different time, and no one is going to dare to try to overturn a law that says kids don't have to wear helmets or don't have to wear pads. That's why it's kind of stuck on the books. But if you go to skate parks throughout California, even the ones with the most restrictive signs, you'll often see nobody with helmets and nobody with pads. And the reason for that is that the municipalities don't enforce it. If you don't enforce it, then you're not liable. So everyone is sort of obligated by their insurance carriers to put these signs up, but only in a few places do they enforce it. And the places where they enforce it, as Michelle has said, they just kill the vibe. You know, having the Half Moon Bay Park right next to the police station it's just a disastrous idea. You know, you have to go through the Boys and Girls Club to even get to that park. But if you go to parks that are really thriving, where the community is coming together, where you see old skaters and young skaters skating together, no one's enforcing those laws, and except the parents of the young skaters are making their kids wear helmets, which is as it probably should be. I wouldn't let my kid skate without a helmet until he got to be about 14 or 15, and then game on, he was going to do what he was going to do. So I don't think I would worry about enforcement. In fact, I would say don't enforce, don't tell the police not to enforce, and then you kind of immunize yourselves from liability. And I think the other thing to bear in mind is, as Michelle pointed out very smartly a couple of meetings ago, skaters just don't sue. So that ramp has been there for 8 years. There hasn't been any lawsuit at all, even though if someone wanted to, they could have found the guys who built it, they could have caused problems. So I would say your point is a great one, which is don't worry about it, like don't make it perfect, just put a sign up that telling people basically skate at your own risk, and then you have the details that your insurance company requires, and then just get on with it.
That's
No
the
worries.
plan. Yeah,
That's all I say.
great, thank you very much. That is indeed the plan. We want to just get this moving, get it done, tick off the boxes in as, community respecting way that we possibly can, that's what we're doing, so. Thank you for all
So
your-
what I find interesting, even the meeting's different than I thought it would be in terms of, I thought both us and them, in terms of the need, we're gonna be more urgent to figure out something even now. It's kind of interesting in terms of everyone's kind of saying we need to do things the right way. And, almost in the sense that I think of, if Caltrain's on record saying, we're not gonna do anything with it, relax, we're gonna come to you guys first if we are. as long
No,
as you
they
guys
said
are-
as long as we were moving
as long as we're
forward,
moving
they weren't
forward
going to
with
do
it.
anything, and we
So-
are,
So that's where it ultimately becomes 100% about doing things completely right, even if that takes a while, because any trigger of doing anything wrong is kind of like messing with a beehive in terms of, everything from little moves to the more official that we get involved in it, the more chance of it being able to trigger some type of permit process or anything else, where it's almost like, I feel like it's like we're in the perfect position that we can, that everyone's, at ease, knowing that we do everything to do things the right way. And that's the most important thing, because anything other than that, by trying to rush into it, could trigger the ultimate worst thing that we don't want, which is, the process of coming in and requiring some type of permit or anything else.
Because of this meeting tonight and the meeting we'll have next week, and the publication will go in on the 24th of July, we would be able to move forward on August 23rd. So if we have everything in place in terms of the signs ready to go up, the volunteers, the people are going to move it, and get the inspector lined up, we could probably just turn it around in a day, and hopefully, it would be nice to see skaters on it that weekend. The 23rd is a Friday. I think we can easily do that.
Great. And just for the community, I understand there's a lot of volunteers who are happy to be involved in this. I'm very prepared to support spending GCSD money for whatever is necessary to make this move successful. And I do think, I know the plan is to put a new surface on it, and I think we're happy to help with the cost of that. So just let us know. I think we're all on board with that, correct?
Absolutely.
And so,
To that end, can I say there's a couple people here who were very much involved in the original building of the park, of the ramp, and so I'd encourage you to have Matthew, or you can reach out to me, I can put you in touch with the guys, because there's a squad of dudes ready to move that ramp.
Great.
And they want to be involved.
Get on my-
And
Yeah.
you want them involved.
yes, I'm not saying we're going to take it over, I'm just saying
Yeah.
we're here,
Yeah.
we'll help
What
as
you don't want
needed.
to do is hire someone from San Mateo to come over
No.
the hill and put that thing together. No, but the more you get the locals involved, the better.
Yeah, yeah.
Then they'll make
You
sure
tell
that
us
they're
what you need.
not- don't mess with it. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
So we can make that happen.
Great.
Okay.
Put it on your calendars.
Yes. All right. Anything further? So the ordinance is called an ordinance amending district ordinance code relating to skateboard facilities. I need a motion to waive the first reading of the ordinance and approve the ordinance as presented, subject to the second reading of the ordinance. Someone want to make that motion?
And it's just an ordinance
Just say-
to
So
just start the
I will read
process.
it again if you would
So
like.
moved.
So moved. Good.
Is
Is
it
there a
so moved
second?
for?
I'll second.
All right.
And I was just gonna
Any-
say that this will just start the process, and this is what we're gonna build upon in terms of the first step in terms of.
This passes this ordinance right
Yeah.
here that has the rules.
Yeah, with the plan that,
Which our
that
attorneys.
we're gonna expand it as we get the details of it.
No, we're not going to expand the ordinance. The ordinance is the ordinance. It's, and
Sealed
it's,
conduct or sealed.
you know, it's going to require another reading, and then it has to go in the paper for 30 days. If anybody has issues with the wording, then the process
That
slows
starts
down.
over.
And
Did
I-
anybody have any issues? Everyone's generally good with,
Yes. And, you know, our attorneys have actually spent quite a lot of time on this. I think the goal has been to have it as clear and non-complex as possible. So, anything further from anyone? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Do we need to have a roll call on that? Because
No.
it's an ordinance? No?
No.
Okay, good. All in favor? Yay.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you for coming.
I have one more thing that we're going to talk about briefly. No, I was going to do something under committee reports.
You guys might be interested.
You might want to stay for a minute just for committee reports. We have one more thing in the agenda that I was just going to talk about briefly. David and I were delegated as the committee to start meeting and getting Burnham Park planning going again, and I just wanted to give a quick report of what we are doing, so the community sort of knows, you know, you can think ahead. The Park Advisory Committee is working on a survey, similar to the one that was done when GCSD was created to do parks. The idea, they are going to bring that survey to the board at the August meeting. It will be mailed to the whole community, and people will be able to either fill it out and, you know, send it back or do it online. And it's going to talk both about parks options for Burnham, other park issues that are needed in the community. It's going to talk about the recreation programs, because, you know, we've had recreation programs. You know, what does the community really want and need for recreation programs? And it's going to include, we're mailing to everybody an invitation to a workshop that's going to be held toward the end of September at the elementary school. And it's going to, I'm not going to go into the whole details of it, but we're going to really explain some of the constraints on Burnham's, you know, where the drainages are, and, you know, some of the things that limit the impacts. And then we're going to break into groups, and we're going to give people a chance to actually draw on a map some of the amenities and just figure out what goes where, what could go where. And there'll be a chance for people to vote as to what they do want and what they don't want at that workshop. And there will also be comment forms for people to take home, and there'll be comment forms available for people to send in on that specific project. And the idea, then they'll report out, and we'll have in the small groups, if there's consensus, they'll all report out, but there'll also be the option for, you know, a minority report if people didn't agree with some of the things that were done. We've figured out a lot of details, been working with David and Nancy Marsh from our Park Advisory Committee to try to figure out a workshop that's really going to make people feel part of the process and yet also give us really useful information. Just to remind everyone that one of the amenities that was supported in the general discussion that the board had was a skate park on the property. So we're going to want you guys to be involved in that. You know, that doesn't make it mean it's definitely going to happen. Doesn't mean it's not going to, you know, it just means that there's a general support for it, and we're going to want to hear from the community about that. And then people will be able to fill it out, and then we'll have facilitators there, and then there will be a second meeting in November on the property with maybe, you know, we haven't quite figured out that meeting, with the goal of having a board discussion in maybe January that would come up with some final recommendations for Burnham Park, and then, you know, start the final planning process and the environmental review process and so forth, the approval process, which will probably take a good year or more. So, but progress. So I know you guys are, you know, probably have more than just the skate park as issues that are important to you, but look for this information, and then finally, the last thing is that if people in the community send an email to info@granada.ca.gov, you can be put on the list to get an email agendas for all of our meetings and information about what the Park Advisory Committee is doing, information about, community involvement meetings. So we're working really hard to get the Burnham Park process really, really supercharged and make sure that we really, really hear from the community. So I wanted you all to hear that little report. So.
Yeah, so, and then, just so I could sleep good at night in terms of what's agreed to, where I felt like there was some disagreement. I think I think for the most part, that's, that's where we spent most of the time talking about, that's where there's a lot of agreement. I think where I feel a little bit uncomfortable is that obviously there is a need that in order to have a good meeting, we have to take certain things that are out of our control. One good example of, I love the idea in one of the drawings where all the traffic came off Highway 1 into one way into the parking lot, if we did have a parking lot, just because I felt like, oh my God, that would ease congestion on the coast. Crazy, El Granada might get backed up a little bit more, but Highway 1 would just be so much more clean, just one way in, off the road. And then it kind of got to the point where we went back and forth for a while, and Barbara made a good point saying, David, even if that was possible, it's out of our control. That's a Caltrans issue. And that made sense. And I kind of said, okay, we could plan it into our project in terms of this could be a place where it could be, and maybe that drives some of the decision maker in. But yeah, that would be a 10-year thing that is out of our control, and we could galvanize people to petition Caltrans to speed up the process to try to get their decisions into our project planning. But outside of that, it's outside of our control. So
And a crossing of Route 1 is the
yeah,
other one.
and then the crossing of, my
In
comment
previous
was.
things, people spent a lot of time talking about
Yeah.
that, but we can't do anything about that.
And my
So we
comment was,
wanna
what are we
avoid
gonna do,
those.
wait until 2 people die, and then we're gonna say, now we need to think about it? And so it's like, we do need to think about it, it just, at the end of the day, we can only think about it and kind of plan, this would be nice where it goes, because Caltrans won't decide on something like that for years, because they don't even know what they're gonna do with the other land they have in terms of pushing back the road and everything. So, I will say that I felt uncomfortable by saying, like, one of the boards we weren't gonna put out at the meeting, and I kind of said, wait, and we went back and forth for a while, and I finally agreed, okay, what about we'll put it upside down on a table in the back room, just so people don't get confused, but just so at the end of the day, it's like, I feel good knowing that, hey, let's at least put this on record that it was, brought about. And so there is, I did agree on one of the things, I'm not gonna leave anything off the table, but, I will make a priority that we do need to focus on, what things we can put together. I think where the other kind of disagreement is, if
Excuse
you
me,
look.
I'm sorry, David.
David,
I
why-
have to
why-
mention that this is not an agenda.
Well, because
item.
otherwise,
No,
yeah,
We're just drawing.
but I'm giving my dissenting view of,
But
otherwise.
David, we just had a whole meeting and well,
I'm explaining what,
In order to.
yeah, and these are the things where I felt
just want
like.
to mention that in order to stay within the Brown Act, we have to keep it the report, and we cannot have a discussion. I just leave it at that.
On my dissenting view of what the actual
It's
was
I
agreed to.
didn't actually
Because we did agree
address
to-
those specific things in my report just now.
But that's where we spent the back and forth, and I'm just saying, just so I could sleep at night, I'm just, I guess I'm in violation of the Brown Act, for trying to share, otherwise the meeting's mischaracterized. What she characterized is what she wrote down at the end that I didn't argue with. But there was,
But we
before
talked
got
about
to
all
that
these
point-
points and you agreed to them, David, in the meeting.
Yeah, and I'm just sharing what those points were. I
And now
guess
you're
you're
just
saying,
changing-
I can't clarify.
I can't
I'm in
collaborate with-
violation of the.
I can't collaborate with you.
Okay,
I
we
mean,
have all
this
this
is
time
crazy.
to, we have one meeting agenda. Usually you guys say it's getting late.
The issue is that the public has the right to know what the discussion is going to be about, and this is not on the agenda, what you're talking about right now.
Okay,
There
so
was
I'll end it right
a
there.
committee report
Can we
be
get
made.
this on the next agenda so that at
If
least?
you let me know,
Okay.
You need to talk to
no
Matthew.
problem.
Yeah.
And David, the things I reported didn't touch on the things that you're mentioning here, so.
The things you report are things that we agreed to. What I would like to clarify at one point.
You're just bringing up
I'll do it
things
next
that we
meeting,
had-
is clarify the things that, even with this meeting as a skate park about, if we're not gonna be planning for a long-term vision of the skate park into our Burnham Street meeting, because we're limited, because that's too long-term.
Who said that? What are you talking about?
The limited by the, phase one of what we can get done. I think we just
We
gotta take.
haven't talked about that at
I
all.
think this is our chance to take a step back and say, let's consider on the options. I look at the list of things that we can
David.
do. Bathrooms, benches, walking trail, lawn area, native vegetation,
David,
parking lot,
this is
picnic.
not the place for this
I know,
discussion.
but the place was, I said, what about, what
I,
about some of these other
David,
things?
David,
Okay, we'll talk about it next, I'll get it on the agenda, because I just,
okay.
yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Just so I could share my feelings of what I feel kind of uncomfortable with.
Okay.
Other than that, yeah, I agree with, what you said, I agree with. I just like to have some format, so in the future, I could share my feelings on what I also don't agree with, which I think we spent a lot of time back and forth with. And so we'll do that at the next meeting if we'll talk with Chuck. I think that's more
All right.
appropriate time.
Anything else to discuss? You have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
everybody.
But, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.